Welcome back to All Again, where passion meets music. And today is the anniversary of John Lennon. He passed away 45 years ago today on the 8th of December 1980. He lived in the Dakota building, which is just off Central Park in New York and Manhattan. And he was out for the evening with his wife Yoko Ono. And when he returned, unfortunately, we all know what happened. I don't want to say it here in case this video is blocked, but we all know the story. And then, of course, he became legendary at that stage. And I'm very interested to know people that were alive at the time, because I wasn't alive at the time. What did this mean when John actually passed away, and the way he did pass away? Because, obviously back then, the whole thing about security around rock stars and stuff like that wasn't what it is now. And I think John passing away led to increases in security. But I'm also interested to know, like in the 1980s, particularly the late 1980s, was he much of a cultural figure? Was he, part of the mainstream? Because, things had moved on. There were other bands that were obviously much bigger than the Beatles at that point. The Beatles broke up in 1970. I think John left shortly before they broke up even. But John had, the early 1970s, he had some interesting albums. He did some work with Yoko Ono and the Plastic Ono Band, which is very avant-garde, very out there stuff. And then he had some pop albums and stuff like that. He had a covers album, but I don't think his output throughout the 1970s was as good maybe as some of the other members of the Beatles. So I'm just wondering, and I always did wonder, was he culturally relevant at that time in 1980? I know obviously since then he's probably had a massive resurgence of popularity because he's passed away. And that usually happens a lot with rock stars that have passed away. Maybe at the time they're not as relevant or as big, and then when they pass away they become immortal, as it were. Their legacy lives on forever because they're not there to tarnish it anymore, essentially. But I've always been interested in that. So if there's anyone watching this channel, watching this video, and you're a John Lennon fan and you were alive and around at the time when John passed away in 1980, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave it in the comments below and let me know if it was, something that was really a cultural event, or whether, it was a cultural event, but was John that popular in the late 1970s? But this album I just want to talk about here, this is the first album I ever bought from John Lennon of his solo work. It's called Lennon Legend, the very best of John Lennon, I should even say. I think it was released in 1997, and it's quite a good album. It captures the best of John's work from the 1970s after he left the Beatles. So it's got some pretty cool photographs on the inner sleeve here. And then when we go in here, you'll see the list of the songs, and you can see John there in the studio playing his guitar. So it starts off with Imagine, which is credited as John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band with the Flux Fiddlers, and that was released on the album Imagine from 1971. This is probably one of John's most iconic songs, Imagine. I think everyone is aware of that song, and probably eclipses a lot of the stuff he did with the Beatles, to be honest. The next song then is Insta Karma, which was released as a single in 1970. And then the third track on this one is Mother, which was taken from the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, which was released in 1970. And then we have Jealous Guy, which was off Imagine as well. So there was two massive hits from Imagine and Jealous Guy. Then we have Power to the People, which was a single released in 1971. And then one of my favourite John Lennon tracks is next, number 6, Cold Turkey. So this one was released as a single in 1969, actually. So before it's the Plastic Ono Band it's credited with. So I'm not sure if that was released before he left the Beatles or not. But Eric Clapton actually plays the lead guitar on this song. So if you haven't checked that one out before, and you're ever wondering what Eric Clapton sounded like when he was with John Lennon, go check that one out, Cold Turkey. But it's a great song. And the next one was Love, which is also taken from John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band from 1970. Then we have Mind Games, which is taken from the album of the same name from 1973. I think that's a great song. We get some more pictures here on the album of John and Yoko. Then we get a picture of John and Phil Spector, okay, his producer at the time, and obviously we know what went on with Phil Spector after this one. So it's a lot of tragedy from this album, or from the people involved in John Lennon's career. The next one then is Whatever Gets You Through the Night, and that was credited to John Lennon, and that was from his album Walls and Bridges from 1974. Then we get Number 9 Dream, which is actually number 10 on the album, and that's again from Walls and Bridges. Then we have some of the covers. So we got Stand By Me, which was written by King, Lieber and Stoller. That appeared on the album Rock and Roll, which is the covers album I mentioned, and that was released in 1975. And then we have Just Like Starting Over, which is off the album Double Fantasy, which was released in 1980. And of course, after John passed away, that album did exceptionally well. The next one we have is Woman, which is from the album Double Fantasy as well, and that's a huge hit for John Lennon. We have Beautiful Boy off Double Fantasy as well, and I think Double Fantasy was kind of considered a return to form for John. Watching the Wheels is off Double Fantasy. We've got Nobody Told Me, which is off Milk and Honey, which was a posthumous release. So that one was released in 1984 after John passed away. We have Borrowed Time from Milk and Honey as well from 1984. We've Working Class Hero, which is from John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band, released in 1970. Then we have Happy Christmas, War Is Over, and at this time of year that song is obviously played an awful lot. That's from John and Yoko and the Plastic Ono Band with the Harlem Community Choir, released in 1971 as a single. And then we have Give Peace a Chance from the Plastic Ono Band, released as a single in 1969. Now, I always really like this photograph. It's a picture of John Lennon and George Harrison, his old mate from the Beatles. George came in to play on John's first album. And then we have this one here, which is John Lennon, because they're counting his money, but I think that's very much done tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, it's a great little album. If you're just getting into John Lennon, or if you are looking to experience his music in, all the best hits just on one album, this is the one to go for. It definitely is a great addition to any catalogue. But yeah, I'd just like to talk a little bit about John Lennon. So he was a massive impact on me growing up, in terms of learning about music and learning to play guitar. I think with the Beatles, certainly early on, he was the one that really stood out for me. I think he had an amazing voice. Not only that, he was kind of like the leader, the de facto leader of the band, certainly early on. And I always liked that. And I always thought as well, he was more liberal than Paul McCartney. Certainly he was against the system. He wanted to challenge ideas and concepts, and he was, for peace against war. And I think he was always like an outspoken voice, and I think that always resonated with me. I know certainly a lot of the grunge bands are massive fans of John Lennon. Certainly Kurt Cobain was a massive fan of John Lennon, but I think he had this aura about him that Paul McCartney maybe didn't have. I think Paul maybe was more interested in playing the game, and with the record companies and the labels, and more kind of into the business end of the music business, where John was maybe a little bit, I don't know, he just wasn't as into the music business side of things, and the whole thing around profits and everything that you have to do to make it in the business. And I think he was happy in the 1970s to kind of, do his own albums in his own way and make whatever music he wanted. And then if he didn't want to put out records, he just wouldn't put them out. But I always do remember John Lennon at this time of year, and I think it's important to mark these little anniversaries and occasions, because these legends, they pass away, but their music is with us forever. And I think that's probably one of the most important things when we have all this fantastic music over the last 50 or so years, 60 years. It's always nice to look back and see where it's all come from. So I hope you enjoyed my video. This is my tribute to John Lennon this year. We did one last year, so certainly go check that one out if you're looking through my channel. And if you have any comments about John Lennon, the Beatles, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, or all the rest, Ringo Starr, please let me know in the comments below. If you could also like and subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.